The Weight of Unfounded Doubts. Chapter 1. The First Seed of Doubt. Amelia sat at the kitchen table, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the rim of her coffee cup. The steam spiraled lazily upwards, but her thoughts were far from the present moment. Instead, they were entangled in a web of uncertainty that had begun to weave itself months ago. It had started innocuously enough. A late-night work call, a meeting that ran longer than expected. But slowly, insidiously, the seeds of doubt had been planted. She remembered the first time she had questioned him. It had been a Tuesday evening, and Daniel had come home later than usual. His excuse had been reasonable, a last-minute client meeting that couldn't be rescheduled. But something in the way he avoided her eyes as he explained had stirred a sense of unease in her. "Who was at the meeting?" she had asked, trying to keep her tone light, casual. "Just the usual team," he had replied, his eyes fixed on his phone as he typed out a quick email. But the seed had been planted. That night, as she lay in bed beside him, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Why hadn't he looked at her when he answered? Was there something he wasn't telling her? Over the next few weeks, that seed of doubt began to grow. Every time his phone buzzed with a new message, she found herself glancing over, trying to catch a glimpse of the screen. She started noticing little things, the way he would step out of the room to take certain calls, the occasional late-night text. Each small action fed the creeping insecurity gnawing at her. The once blissful routine of their lives began to feel strained. She started avoiding simple conversations, instead opting for more probing questions, trying to find hidden meanings in his words and actions. The ease and comfort that had characterized their relationship seemed to be slipping away, replaced by a tense undercurrent that neither of them fully acknowledged. Chapter 2. The Silent Accusations. As the weeks turned into months, Amelia's doubts grew stronger. She began to scrutinize every detail of Daniel's behavior, looking for any signs that might confirm her suspicions. The warmth and affection that had once defined their relationship was slowly being replaced by a cold distance, an invisible wall that seemed to rise between them. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, watching a movie, Amelia's thoughts drifted once again to the possibility of infidelity. Daniel's phone, which was lying on the coffee table, lit up with a new notification. He glanced at it briefly before turning it face down. The action was so small, so insignificant, but to Amelia it was like a glaring red flag. "Who was that?" she asked, trying to sound nonchalant. Daniel looked at her, surprised by the question. "Just a message from Mark about tomorrow's meeting," he replied, his tone even. But Amelia wasn't satisfied. "Why didn't you answer it? Why did you put your phone face down?" Daniel's brow furrowed in confusion. "It's just a work message, Amelia. I'll reply later, why does it matter?" But it did matter, at least to her. The doubts that had been festering inside her for so long were now bubbling to the surface, threatening to spill over. "I just think it's strange," she said, her voice tinged with accusation. "You've been getting a lot of messages lately, and you always seem to be stepping out of the room to take calls. What are you hiding, Daniel?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of its implications. Daniel stared at her, a mixture of hurt and frustration in his eyes. "I'm not hiding anything," he said, his voice firm but pained. "Amelia, you're overthinking this. There's nothing going on." But she couldn't let it go. The doubt had taken root so deeply that it clouded her judgment, making it impossible for her to see the truth. And so, the accusations continued, each one chipping away at the trust and love that had once formed the foundation of their relationship. Chapter 3. The Breaking Point. The days turned into weeks, and the tension between them only grew. Amelia's constant questioning and suspicion became a daily occurrence, and Daniel, worn down by the relentless accusations, began to withdraw. The vibrant, loving relationship they had once shared was now a shadow of its former self, replaced by a cold distance that neither of them seemed able to bridge. One evening, after yet another argument over a seemingly innocent text message, Daniel finally reached his breaking point. He stood in the middle of their living room, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, his expression one of utter despair. "I can't do this anymore, Amelia," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I can't keep defending myself against accusations that have no basis in reality. I love you, but I feel like I'm losing you to something that doesn't even exist." Amelia felt a sharp pang of guilt at his words, but the doubts that had taken hold of her wouldn't let go. "But what if I'm right?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What if there's something you're not telling me?" Daniel shook his head, a look of profound sadness in his eyes. "There's nothing, Amelia, nothing. But your constant suspicion is tearing us apart. I don't know how much more of this I can take." The silence that followed was suffocating. Amelia could see the pain in Daniel's eyes, the weariness in his posture, but she was too consumed by her own fears to reach out to him, and so the distance between them grew wider until it became an unbridgeable chasm. Chapter 4. The Departure. The day Daniel left was a grey, rainy day that mirrored the turmoil in Amelia's heart. She had woken up that morning to find him sitting on the edge of the bed, his suitcase packed and ready by the door. "Daniel, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice shaky with fear. He looked at her with a mixture of sorrow and resignation. "I need to go, Amelia. I need some space to think, to breathe. This isn't healthy for either of us." Panic surged through her. "You're leaving? You're just going to walk out?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't want to leave, but I can't stay in this environment where I'm constantly being doubted and accused. It's breaking me, Amelia. I need to get away, clear my head." Amelia felt her world crumbling around her. She wanted to beg him to stay, to promise that she would change, that she would trust him, but the words caught in her throat. All she could do was watch as he picked up his suitcase and walked out the door, leaving her standing in the middle of their empty home, consumed by a pain that was entirely self-inflicted. Chapter 5. The Aftermath. In the days that followed, Amelia was a shell of her former self. The house, once filled with laughter and love, was now eerily silent. Every room was a painful reminder of the life they had shared, the life she had lost because of her own insecurities. She replayed their last conversation over and over in her mind, each time feeling the sting of regret more sharply. Why hadn't she believed him? Why had she let her fears destroy the one person who had loved her unconditionally? The realization that she had driven him away with her baseless accusations was a heavy burden to bear. She had been so consumed by the fear of losing him that she had inadvertently pushed him away. The irony was not lost on her. It was her own actions that had led to the very outcome she had feared the most. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of her guilt grew heavier. She couldn't bring herself to return to work. Her friends' calls went unanswered, and the once vibrant life she had known seemed to be slipping away. It was as if she was punishing herself for what she had done, retreating into a self-imposed exile of solitude and regret. Chapter 6. The Path to Healing. One morning, after what felt like an eternity of wallowing in her own despair, Amelia woke up with a resolve she hadn't felt in weeks. She couldn't change the past, but she knew she couldn't continue living in this limbo of guilt and self-pity. She had to confront her demons, face the consequences of her actions, and take the first steps toward healing. Her first step was reaching out to a therapist, someone who could help her untangle the web of insecurities and fears that had led to the breakdown of her relationship. The process was slow and painful, forcing her to confront the deep-rooted issues that had driven her to mistrust the man she loved. But with each session, she began to gain a clearer understanding of herself and the destructive patterns she had fallen into. As she worked through her emotions, Amelia also began to reconnect with the world around her. She started by reaching out to her friends, apologizing for her absence, and explaining what had happened. To her surprise, they responded with understanding and support, offering a lifeline that she hadn't realized she needed. Rebuilding her life wasn't easy, but it was necessary. She started going for long walks, allowing herself to breathe in the fresh air and clear her mind. She picked up old hobbies that had once brought her joy, finding solace in the simple act of creating something with her hands. Slowly but surely, she began to piece herself back together. Chapter 7. The cool months had passed since Daniel had walked out of their home, and though the pain of his departure still lingered, Amelia had made significant strides in her journey toward healing. She had learned to manage her insecurities, to recognize when her fears were unfounded, and to communicate her feelings in a healthier way. But there was one thing she hadn't done: reach out to Daniel. It wasn't that she didn't want to. The thought of contacting him had crossed her mind countless times, but every time she picked up the phone, a wave of fear would wash over her, and she would put it down again. She was terrified of what he might say, of the possibility that he had moved on, and that she was too late. But as the weeks turned into months, Amelia realized that she couldn't keep living in limbo. She needed closure, whether it meant finding a way to rebuild their relationship, or accepting that it was truly over. And so, one afternoon, with her heart pounding in her chest, she finally dialed his number. Hello? His voice on the other end of the line was cautious, guarded. Daniel, it's me, Amelia, she said, her voice trembling. I'm so sorry for everything I've put you through. I let my insecurities get the best of me, and I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to apologize for. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and Amelia's heart sank as she feared he might hang up. But then he spoke. I'm glad you called, he said quietly. I've been doing a lot of thinking too. They talked for hours that day, both of them airing their feelings, their fears, and their regrets. Amelia knew it would take time to rebuild the trust she had shattered, but for the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of hope. She was willing to do whatever it took to make things right, to prove to Daniel that she could be the partner he deserved. Chapter 8. The Rebuilding. Rebuilding their relationship was not easy. It required patience, understanding, and a commitment to change. Amelia attended therapy to work through her insecurities and learn to trust again. Daniel, too, needed time to heal from the emotional wounds left by her accusations. They agreed to take things slowly, to focus on open communication and honesty. At first, their conversations were hesitant, filled with a cautiousness that hadn't been there before. But as they spent more time together, the old familiarity began to return. They started going on walks together, sharing meals, and eventually laughing again. The love that had once been buried under layers of doubt and mistrust began to resurface, stronger and more resilient than before. Amelia was determined to show Daniel that she had changed, not just for him, but for herself. She made a conscious effort to communicate openly, to express her feelings without letting her fears take over. She learned to trust, not only in him, but in their relationship. And slowly, Daniel began to open up as well, sharing his own vulnerabilities and fears. There were still challenges, moments of uncertainty where old habits threatened to resurface. But they faced them together, armed with the knowledge that they had both grown, and that their relationship was worth fighting for. They had been through the fire, and they had come out stronger on the other side. Chapter 9. The New Beginning. A year had passed since the day Daniel had walked out, and their relationship had transformed in ways neither of them could have imagined. They had rebuilt their trust, their love, and their partnership, creating a new foundation that was stronger and more resilient than ever before. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset, Daniel turned to Amelia and took her hand. "I'm proud of us," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "We've come a long way." Amelia smiled, squeezing his hand. "We have," she agreed. "And I'm so grateful for that. For you." He looked at her, his eyes soft with affection. "I'm grateful for you too, Amelia. You've changed so much, and I've seen how hard you've worked. I love you more now than I ever did before." Tears welled up in her eyes, but this time they were tears of happiness. "I love you too, Daniel. I'm so sorry for everything I put you through, but I'm so glad we found our way back to each other." They sat there in comfortable silence, the past behind them and the future stretching out before them, filled with hope and possibility. They had been through the worst, and they had come out stronger for it. Together, they had created a new beginning, one built on love, trust, and the hard-earned knowledge that their relationship was worth fighting for. Chapter 10. Moving Forward. As the years went by, Amelia and Daniel continued to grow together. They faced challenges, both big and small, but they faced them as a team. The trust they had rebuilt became the bedrock of their relationship, allowing them to navigate life's ups and downs with confidence and love. Amelia no longer felt the need to question Daniel's every move. She had learned to trust him fully, to let go of the insecurities that had once plagued her. In turn, Daniel felt more secure in their relationship, knowing that they had both done the work to ensure its success. They built a life together that was filled with love, laughter, and mutual respect. They travelled, explored new hobbies, and created new memories, each one a testament to the strength of their bond. They were no longer the same people they had been when they first met, but their love had grown and evolved, becoming something even more beautiful and enduring. And as they looked back on their journey, they knew that every challenge, every moment of doubt, had been worth it. They had emerged from the darkness stronger, wiser, and more in love than ever before. Their story was one of redemption, of learning to trust not only in each other, but in themselves, and of discovering that true love can weather any storm. In the end, they had found their happily ever after, not because their life was perfect, but because they had chosen to build it together, one day at a time, with love, patience, and unwavering commitment.